Okay, let's do everybody's favorite format recently, Q&A. So I'll answer questions that people leave here on comments. And we'll see what comes up. This is from an experiencer report. They said, "It's amazing how well you describe how this feels. So spot on. Thanks a lot for your videos, Angelo." You're welcome. Someone said, "I recall being right there and getting the cosmic joke of it all." It is truly, truly a cosmic joke. It's a joke that is like a joke inside a joke inside a joke. And the weirdest thing is, the only way to get the joke is to realize you're not in on the joke. If you try to be in on the joke, then you don't get the joke. Once you get the joke, there's no one that's there. There's no one for the joke to be played on. So it's so funny, right? Because there's no audience. It's just the joke laughing at itself, the universe laughing at itself. Renko said, "I've had numerous occasions where a sensation, sound, or thought is just the knowing of it." Okay. So I'm going to say something that is subtle here, but I want to make a very important distinction between this. And I can't know what this person's talking about, so I'm not necessarily referring to their specific experience because I don't know. I would have to kind of talk with them a little bit, probably. But there's a very important insight where you will experience non-separation between the subject and object of experience within consciousness. And it will feel exactly like this. Sensation, sound, and thought is just the knowing of it. Okay. Now that is a very profound experience, and it's an important insight, and it marks a sort of stage of realization. There's a difference between that and the experience of sound with no knower anymore at all. So I might say that the obliteration of any sense of knowing and sound as universe, or sound on its own with no remainder at all, is what I would call non-dual realization. And I just want to make that distinction because I do see people speak and even teach this way, where the knowing of something is the kind of like the ultimate. The knowing of it is all there is, or all that exists, or it's the most indivisible experience. And it is, as long as the self-structure remains. But there's a realization beyond that that's very, very difficult to talk about. And it's very easy to conflate the two. It's very easy to take this first case for the second case. Again, I'm not talking necessarily about what this person's experiencing because words are tricky, but the way it's described sort of sounds like that. They said, "One night while falling asleep, it was clear that there's nothing before and nothing after the knowing, which isn't even now." True, absolutely. That sounds like unbound consciousness, or what I would call unbound consciousness. But, and that's a very, very important insight. That is Kensho, essentially, in my experience, my estimation. It's really awakening, but it's not non-dual. If it's the knowing that's that emphasized. Pure knowingness, another word for it would be, this is kind of using a Dzogchen description, would be knowingness, which is a beautiful term, very much like that. Someone said, "If you want to let go, start by letting go of wanting." Beautiful. Yeah, it works, right? But you can't let go of wanting conceptually, because you can conceptually see that, oh, the wanting is the problem. If I want, then it creates a sense of future, creates a sense of seeking, creates a sense of apartness, somewhere I can get to. So we can intellectually see that and go, oh, I have to stop wanting, right? Then what we can do is just kind of have another thought that says, okay, so I don't want anything. But that's not really letting go of wanting. This really gets to the heart of this whole matter about whether talking about awakening as an experience, as an event, as something you can work toward is productive or counterproductive. And there are definitely people out there, many in contemporary online Dharma, let's call it. They probably wouldn't even call it that. They would say that, yeah, talking about awakening is like problematic somehow. And I disagree for various reasons, but it has to be presented correctly, of course. It has to be clearly elucidated that awakening isn't in the future. And it's not what your mind thinks it is. It's definitely not that. That's seeking, right? But that's not what I'm talking about when I say awakening. That's part of it. But the other part of it, and this is important, is that often what's required, or often what culminates in awakening, is when someone has been directing their seeking that's already there. It's not like you're starting seeking when you learn about enlightenment. It's already there. It's a very, very powerful psychological force. So directing that seeking down to something very one-pointed, or to the root of your identity, or to something like the orientation to living truth, is skillful. It's actually very skillful. And often when you do that, you do come to a place where you can't go any farther. You do exhaust the seeker in a way. You exhaust that energy of control, but you also can't just sidestep that a lot of times. You can't just go, well, I'm just not even going to go on if the journey ends where it begins, then I'm not going to go on the journey. No, that's not right either. Now what you're doing is you're still seeking, but you're seeking in inverse. It's like a reverse seeking. You're seeking through hesitation. You're seeking through avoidance of the ride that you sense you'd have to go on, which goes down through some intense emotional barriers, some identity barriers. So letting go of wanting is very potent, but you have to actually explore the wanting thoroughly. You have to go down to the root of what wanting is all about. What is it rooted in? Why do you want? Why do you desire? Why do you seek? It seems like, I just seek because it would be enjoyable or something. And there's a truth to that. I mind wander because I like the idea of thought and, imagination and creation. Yes, there's a creativity to that. That's true too. That's not what revs up the seeking engine, though. The seeking engine that feels fundamentally uncomfortable, fundamentally disorienting, fundamentally unsatisfactory, that's a much, much deeper mechanism. And it's a mechanism that's actually rooted in fear. And that fear is rooted in a very fundamental experience of separation, of being this tiny little distinct entity in this vast universe. That's terrifying, of course, to inhabit a body that's separate from everything that can and will grow old, become ill, and die. That's scary. It's not just scary, it's terrifying, right? So, but to get down through that root of what the wanting, the seeking grows out of, that's what we're talking about here when we talk about awakening. It's not sidestepping it through an intellectual understanding, which again, Fishballs here, Fishballs is the one that made this comment. I doubt Fishballs actually is meaning that this is like sidestepping this through intellect. Fishballs is probably meaning like, yeah, letting go of the wanting is a very powerful move or maneuver, or it's not even an intention. It's a very powerful event that is born of exhausting the seeker, exhausting the one that feels like it can control this experience, this realization, specifically this realization, right? Becoming one-pointed can get you there, for instance, get you here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Fishballs. All right, what do we got? Heather's Wall said, that happened to me. I thought I was the awake one and everyone else was asleep. Let's see. What's she talking about? Can't really tell. Thanks, Holmes, someone said. You're welcome. Someone said, Heather again said, just living in pure experience. I recall that place, and you can't grab hold of anything as it just comes through you. That's right. Can't grab hold of anything. This is what it feels like, this shift in identity I talk about. It's one description of how it feels. It's like before, it could have been a moment before, a minute before this shift, or sometimes the shift is hard to pinpoint exactly. But before it, it's like all you're doing is holding. All you're doing is grasping. And there's something really unsatisfying about the grasping, right? Because if you look close enough, you don't even know, like, am I really grasping anything? You're not grasping anything. You're grasping at ghosts. You're grasping at thoughts. Your whole life is a bunch of thoughts, right? Or what you take yourself to be. That's uncomfortable because it's so illusory and it's so small and contracted. And then when that shifts, when something shifts, something lets go, there's nothing to grab hold of, but you couldn't, it's laughable to think you could. You don't want to grab hold of anything. The non-grasping is so relieving. It's so relieving not to have to grasp. Everything is in flow. Everything just moves on its own accord naturally. I've never had to do it. I've never had to do anything. I'm off the hook, everything is flow, simply, even to say I'm off the hook or I've let go of a burden or the weight has been released from me, that's even saying too much. Like, you don't even have to revel in that because there's no one who inherits that. There's no one who experiences that. It's just seen to be the case. And there's so much fluidity and peace in that. It's wonderful. And she said, you don't retain anything any longer. Isn't that beautiful? Heather Wall. You don't retain anything any longer. You don't need to retain it. You don't try to retain anything. You're out of the business of retention. You're out of the business of grasping and pushing away. So nice. Okay, Flyboy said, what I loved about this one was I brought it into focus. The ability to notice when what was being said got hijacked by conceptuality. I can follow an experience to a point beyond which it becomes conceptual, or at least I notice the conceptual mind trying to imagine it. Good. That's great. Just to see that, all right? Just to see that there's a way to be led into this immediacy. And that's what I'm doing in almost all the videos. I'm pretty much doing it all in all the videos at some point. And when this is opaque to someone, when that pointing is completely not noticeable to someone, it's obvious because of their comments. They'll say, like, this is just nonsense. Like, they'll say, you're speaking nonsense, or this is just complete, hooey. Or sometimes they'll say, like, you're just defrauding people. You're just making this stuff up or something, right? And I don't take offense to that. I empathize with these analyses because I remember it. I never had this kind of pointing or whatever to experience directly, but like, poetry or reading the Tao Te Ching, like I could feel at some level, like, actually, I don't even know if I could feel it. I guess intellectually I knew, like, there has to be something here. This is an ancient text. Like, there's got to be some value to this, but my mind couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was all contradictory, circular logic. It made no sense, right? So that opacity, when someone watches a video like this and there's just nothing there, what that means is the conceptual mind, they're not getting past it. And I'm pointing past it constantly. So of course it doesn't make sense. But when you start to move past it, that's when you get this experience that Flyboy's talking about, where it says, it brought me into focus, the ability to notice when what was being said got hijacked conceptually. So there's an experience that's not conceptual. You could say beyond, you could say before, but it's just non-conceptual. And that's what I'm always pointing to. There's that knowing. And then boom, you can see the mind's trying to, like, hijack it. It's trying to turn it into something. It's trying to put its stamp on it. It's trying to name it, label it, utilize it, plan for the future, right? You can see that happening. So that's really, really good when you can start to see that fluctuation, very good. When that starts to happen, this is not just for Flyboy, it's for anyone who's experiencing this. When that starts to happen, great. Do not solidify. Do not reify anything. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to get your mind around it. Keep coming back to that gap. The gap will open itself up. You don't need to do that. You don't need to manage this gap. You don't need to manage this process. You can't. But you can engage in it. You can come forward again. Get nose to nose with the unknown, with the mystery. However that happens, I talk about it all the time. Maybe it's even my pointing, my kind of channel, my kind of speaking, my book, all that. Maybe that doesn't do it for you, but something else does. Find it. Go to that precipice. Go to that mystery and get nose to nose with it. Let yourself go beyond your mind, however that has to happen, whether it's another person, non-duality pointer, teacher, speaker, some kind of retreat, being in nature, doing art, whatever works for you, find it. If you're interested in this, this deeper investigation to the nature of reality that you have absolute access to, get yourself to that gap, and then don't try to bridge the gap. That's it. And what's in that gap, what's being offered from that experience will become clearer and clearer and clearer in a nonlinear way. You may not notice it exactly. And you'll see your mind keep trying to grab onto the process and make it propagate. And you just go, God, another thought, right? Whatever. It's fine. But just notice that happening, but just keep coming back. Keep coming back. Keep putting yourself in that fire of truth, however that happens for you. And trust it. That's it. Gumby the Green says, you were right when you first started explaining it. The join button is for starting a paid membership. Okay. Sorry, I get confused about these things. So yeah, if you're looking for a membership button to get to this channel's memberships, at least on some platforms, it'll say join. And that shows paid membership, like the $10 a month, US dollar a month, it's called sustaining member, where you can watch the live and participate by asking questions and get on Zoom with us, which is double-barrel non-duality. It'll be me and another another person answering your questions. Also, there are two retreats. I just did this announcement yesterday, so check it. Well, it'll be yesterday to you, but I'm recording this days in advance, so it'll be a week ago. I'll put the links under this video, but 2 retreats coming. One is online in July. One is in person in December at Art of Living. Okay, this is from DJ Navratil. Have you ever done a video on internal family systems? I haven't, because I'm not an expert in it. I've never read it or anything. Seems to have a very blossoming therapy modality. I've considered it might be nice to interview the author if they're open to interviews. I think that'd be really cool. What's interesting about internal family systems is I noticed over years, like the internal experiences of a child, but it's not just child parent. It's like younger child, older child, and then like adolescent, young adult. There's like these different identities that sort of form, and they're pretty socially constructed actually, but they do get internalized, and then they do interact with one another. And it starts with your parent and you as a very small child. So it's all very absolutely true. And like anything in this whole process, the closer you look at things and the closer you feel into things and understand the motivations of the various aspects of consciousness, the clearer things get and the more relaxed things get and the more things tend to unwind. So I think it's great. Okay. All right. Buddhish Girl, which is kind of a fun name, says, Jeff was amazing. Jeff is amazing. Okay. Then BSO Wow says, my laziness prevents me from the effort. You know what, though? I mean, really, like all of us can relate to laziness. I think some people get really fixated in it, but if you look clearly enough, you'll see laziness actually takes a lot of work, truly. Sometimes it's exhausting watching people try not to just move naturally. You know, it's very mental, actually. It's a very mental thing to try to, preserve my energy and not move and, try to find the easy way to do things. And it's so exhausting, right? We can relate, most people. All right. Someone said, where can I get the soundtrack? For this video in particular, I got the soundtrack from Epidemic Sound, which is really fun. This one in particular, a lot of people gave me polarizing information on. Some people hated the soundtrack to this. It was a little more like, I don't know, energetic and adventurous. Some people were like, can't listen, can't stand it, too distracting. And then other people said they loved it. So, it was almost 50-50. Kind of funny. All right. Okay, this comes from Jennifer. Yes, North Carolina retreat was the wildest week of my life. It was wild. I'm not even kidding. I'm not advertising. I'm just telling you. Every retreat's different. They all have different qualities and different characters, and they all have their own sort of life cycle. This one was off the charts energetically. It was like crazy. It was like this before it started. I could tell it like first day, second day, it was just revving up so powerfully. So much Kundalini was happening. Like I wasn't talking about Kundalini. We weren't doing Kundalini practices per se. People were twitching, and it was just, you could just feel it. It was like electric. It was really wild. Can't guarantee it's like going to be like that next year at the Art of Living, but could be. But yeah, it was something. So anyway, she said, I had no idea how much it would do for me. I met somebody before the retreat. It was really funny. I talk to people like the day the retreat's going to start. When they start showing up, I just say hi to as many people as I can or whatever. And I talked to someone and I asked, have you been on retreats before? And she said, I've only been on like psychedelic retreats or something. And I said, oh, well, these can be psychedelic, And she kind of just laughed. That was it. We didn't talk much more. She found me after the retreat and she goes, I thought you were joking about that. I didn't really realize, she goes, it was really psychedelic for me. It was really and yeah, it can be. The energetics of things can be very surprising sometimes in these settings. Cool. Yeah. So Jennifer says, I had no idea how much it would do for me. I'm still giving and I'm feeling, it is still giving. And I'm feeling so much love at this very moment. I'm so happy for you. It was really nice meeting you. I'm so excited to be there again in December. I'm glad you're coming too. Highly recommended going to this retreat and becoming a channel member. Very beneficial. I'm glad you're getting benefit out of it. I try to offer perks to the channel members. The memberships are truly just donations to Simply Always Awake because it costs money to do what I do. It costs money for equipment, it costs money for time to make the videos, editing the documentary we're making. I give away a lot of stuff. I give away art. I give away memberships to things. I give away retreat position. I give away all kinds of stuff through the business, through the channel. But that comes from donations, right? So, I do appreciate your donations. However, I do offer perks with the donations, like with the membership levels, and they're essentially like access to all the retreat recordings that we have, which are a lot now, and we do several a year. The membership for sustaining members is you can see the lives that happen twice a month. And so those are the main levels that people are generally interested in, but there's also founders level if you're interested in like really more contribution to what we're doing here. And then there's other levels if those are too expensive for you. So I always appreciate the donations. All right. Someone said the Australia retreat is in Otford, just south of Sydney National Park. Yeah, it's you have to go to Violet Synergy's website. There may be 1 or 2 slots left, probably just for men, I think, because there's a room that's a triple occupancy. There may be 1 or 2 left, may not be. All right. Someone said, thoughts cause chemicals and chemicals cause thoughts. Alcohol and other drugs cause our thoughts to flow into escapism, which can be a comfortable place to be while we are there. But you will always eventually crash back to your normal thinking patterns. The trick is to realize that normal thinking patterns are just thoughts, and we don't have to live in them and react to them every minute of the day. Just let them rush by. Don't get caught up in them and just be for a few minutes, a few times every day. Yeah. And you're talking about kind of like mindfulness, which is wonderful. And with enough precision and seeing that like there's a level of mindfulness where you can kind of just touch in a few times a day and, notice thoughts floating by and kind of experience a little bit of a watcher state. All that stuff is good and it will offer value to you. It will offer insight. It will change your overall emotional landscape and things like that, decrease reactivity. It is beneficial. When we talk about awakening, we're talking about a whole other level. It's getting right into the thought mechanism and actually seeing that very, very clearly for long enough, you'll actually affect the mechanism. The mechanism will be altered permanently. But yeah, very good. And of course, substances, yeah, they can be, when used for escapism and so forth, they can really prevent you from getting that kind of precise look. They can't fully, nothing can. I mean, you can wake up no matter what the situation, but they tend to do that. We tend to use them to really avoid. And often what we're avoiding is emotional in nature. We're avoiding some, significant amount of emotion. Often it's grief we don't want to feel. Often it's guilt we don't want to feel, or shame, fear, things like that. So, yeah. Someone said, as an enlightened man, do you feel love? I really liked this one. Song signs. I can't answer that question by saying I'm an enlightened man because that's just so weird to even. How do I explain this? So the idea that I am enlightened, like the thought that says I am enlightened, is so. It's like one of the funniest thoughts there could be because it makes no sense. It doesn't point to anywhere. More importantly, it's the process of identifying, the process of believing I am this or I am that, anything, a man, a person, happy, sad, moving toward, moving away from, that process of identifying again and again and again and again with thoughts. When that process breaks, that's what we call enlightenment, or that's what we call liberation or whatever, right? Or awakening, at least initially. That's what we call that. So to say, I am an enlightened person is so funny. It's very ironic. It's, of course, absurd. It's absurd. So I can't answer the question like directly by saying, yeah, I am an enlightened man and I feel this. So as an enlightened man, I have no idea what that's like because it's just not like that. But do I experience love? Yes. Love to me is the most fundamental experience, probably. But it's not love for a person. It's not love for an idea. It's not like a love for humanity. It's not even really a love for life on the planet or the universe or physicality. It's just a natural love that is intrinsic to the appearance of to appearance. Because I could say the appearance of anything, but it's not things that appear, it's appearances that appear. So it's a sort of love that's intrinsic to appearance, and it's very warm, very all-inclusive. It has no remainder. It's not, it requires nothing. It requires nothing on your part. It's just here. It's so simple. And it shows you, this is the hard part, it shows you how to let go of everything because you have to. You will anyway, right? But the reason it shows you how to let go of everything is because if you don't let go, then you're kind of outside that love. You're not outside of it. You filter it. You feel like you're apart from it. You feel like you've been cast out of the Garden of Eden. So it's an attunement to truth, love, truth and love, appearance, experientially the same. That radiant nature, that luminous nature of appearance, a non-dualistic appearance. Yeah. Breath by breath of life. I love that. Breath by breath. Footstep by footstep, sound by sound, cloud by cloud. Okay, someone said, this is Iyami, I feel this fits some blocks into place. The peace that can be accessed is always there. No more seeking. Yeah, right. Yeah. Ending seeking or noticing the seeking mechanism drop out. And I think it drops at different levels. It kind of depends what you mean by seeking exactly, but seeing it drop out is a very important insight in this process of unfolding, unbinding. The unbinding will continue, but it doesn't continue in a seeking way. So that's why it's such a first big barrier to break the spell of mental seeking. Yeah. Only non-identification with thoughts and staying present. Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's the lens through which all further unbinding will occur. Someone said, this is wagfin piss. I think I was starting to understand the term non-duality until 1:30, and he started puking out a bunch of gobbledygook out on me. Well, sorry. Angelo, could you simply always awake put the link to the full video? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you simply always put the link to the full video? In my shorts, right now, the way the workflow works and the way they're chopped up and sent out everywhere, it doesn't really happen. It's kind of tricky to do that. It's hard to explain why, but maybe in the future I will work on that. But you can always, pretty much always on the shorts now, the title of the short will lead you to the video that it's named after, if it looks like a video title. And some of them have like file names almost, but if it has a video title, then you can find it. And all you do is just go to my main channel and search for that video, and you'll find the full video if you want to listen to it. Okay. Siddharth said, without a willingness to be uncomfortable, none of this seems to be possible. I kind of agree with that. The obsession and identification with not wanting to be uncomfortable that we're unconscious to, that we don't even realize we're doing, that's what sort of, if there's something that quote unquote prevents awakening, that's it. It's just a constant distraction. The lens cannot be set aside if fear of suffering is dominant. That's true. You have to be willing to start to even acknowledge your own fear. Very true. Okay. Nicole Bishop said, always so helpful. Thank you. Every one of your questions and shares. This was on the double barrel non-duality. Yeah, it was fun. Someone said toilet seats. I have no idea what that means. Who was that? I don't know who that is. Someone said, such a lovely couple. Thank you for sharing. I can relate to a lot of what Chris says. My mind likes to understand and control a lot. Lovely to see you letting go of that so much. This was a really, really good video. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. This was one of my favorites. And it was just such a wild situation because people often ask, or they allude to it, and I just know this plays out in people where they're in a relationship and they're very interested in non-duality and awakening, and their partner thinks they're crazy or doesn't get it or is not interested. But this one has this is like a really twist and turn kind of story. It's pretty wild. It's called Awakening in Romance. I Woke Up and She Didn't. So check it out. You might be really pleasantly surprised by the storyline there. It's really fun. Okay, this is from Lucas Lukaistafi. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name there. Your username. It says, awesome, thanks. The last part about the inquiry and the question, what is here right now? What else is here that is not thoughts and labels? I just love it so much. It's a really powerful practice, right? If you're clear on what a thought is and what isn't a thought, when you start to feel the thought mechanism start up and defining some world you're living in now where you're the good person and that person's the bad person and you got to figure it out, or this is what I'm moving through time toward, and I'm got this thing to plan out and I'm thinking about, like when you see their mind revving up, creating these worlds and you go, oh, that's the thought. Okay, well, what else is here without that thought? Or even just set aside the thought. Don't fight it. Just notice that's a thought. That's a constructed inner world. Okay, well, what else is here? What else is happening? And it just leads you right into the unknown at some point. All right. Okay, let's see. Someone says, music is distracting. See, these are the comments on the video I was talking about here. Some people didn't like it. Can't listen to it with the music. And then there's another one that says, clear pointing cluttered unnecessarily by the music. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a great video and then I'm going to unnecessarily clutter it with bad music just to mess with people. Okay. And you also, there's a thing you can get from this too, with any noise that's distracting, is when you feel like, no, that noise, it's messing things up. Like I can't stand it, right? Notice what's happening, right? It's just resistance. It's a feeling of resistance, an experience of resistance. And I'm not saying this to say like my music tastes are perfect, because I know some people like that don't, and like, of course, but what I'm saying is like, if a noise causes that much trigger reaction in you, there's something really valuable to see there. So many years ago when I'd meditate, when I first learned to meditate, and I would have these periods of peace, and then I'd have periods where it wasn't peaceful and my mind was racing. But there was something about like a ticking clock. It would drive me nuts. Like even if I could hear it like 3 rooms away, I would think, oh God, that clock. And it's so funny because I really believed the clock was annoying me, or I believed the clock sound was a problem. I didn't see that the belief was the problem. And now it's not like that at all. There can be a ticking or a sound or a hum or a voices, or it doesn't matter. It's just sound. It's so immersive. It's so beautifully immersive. It doesn't even matter. There's no like, oh, I like that sound or I don't. It's just sound. Sound is so powerfully immersive. So sometimes I think it's actually competing with your mind, and that's what is uncomfortable, right? The sound is pulling you. Some people will be like, it's distracting. I'm like, let it distract you. Let it pull you into the sound. Let the sound pull you beyond the words. That's why I do it, actually. That's why I put the sounds there. That's why I put the backgrounds there. That's purposeful. Truly. Don't worry about what I'm saying. Let my words lead you beyond, and let the senses lead you beyond. That's really what I'm pointing to with this stuff. Cool. Someone said, this is Peter Parker. All right. He said, I have heard it often that the thoughts and emotions that are believed are like clouds and need not be held onto. Yes. because of what I really am, this vast presence. That's great, but the way I was answering one of the earlier questions, don't just conceptualize that. What are the implications if thoughts aren't really real, right? Look really closely into your experience, even if it takes some concentrated effort for a time, and notice like, okay, well, what's really happening then if all those thoughts about me and the world and this moment and time, if those aren't even anything but ghosts, what's actually here? And your mind will say, well, nothing's here then. Okay, well, that's another thought. What's really happening? Until you've exhausted the thoughts. That's where I want you to go with it, right? Take that understanding as a pointer and an attunement to your own practice and use it in a precise way to go beyond the conceptual. That's the key. Otherwise, it's mindfulness, and mindfulness is fine, but it's not realization. Cool. Ball Smasher says, I don't see the free will. There's only conditioned movement and automatic responses, but I do cling to free will, and I will, because why not? And it doesn't really matter if there is free will or not. I like that. I mean, you're definitely loosening up on that grasp on what's real and what's not real, and free will and freedom, and like those concerns that felt heavier for you recently based on what you were saying, they're much more loose now, and that's great. You're right. It doesn't matter, does it? So if free will doesn't matter if it's there or not, and if the sense of free will is just an experience that you can't control, is it even there? Is that happening? How do you know it's actually happening? How do you know it's will? What is required for will, or that physical experience to be will? Personal will. Well, the personal, that's required, isn't it? Or an image in the mind of how things could be, that will is seeming to be directed toward or to control. If all of that is thought, and the will experiences a feeling, then what? Where are you left? What are you left with? Cool. Prue Evans says, that is so good to hear, that I cannot be harmed by emotional stuff. Yeah, you can't. Of course not. You cannot be harmed by emotional experiences. And don't let anyone convince you that you can. Harm comes from fear of emotional experiences and massive amounts of layers of resistance and reactivity around those emotional experiences that we're always there to avoid them, that we inherited from other people, sometimes even violent and destructive patterns. But those aren't the emotions. Those are the reactions to them. So the emotion, the truth that emotion cannot harm you is very important. It's very important to really digest that, because you have the capacity to feel so profoundly and so deeply without concluding anything, without having to turn it into control of life, control of yourself, control of another person. You don't need that. You don't want that even. It's an illusion. This person said, I had so many no-go areas, so many must-have needs, right? We're convinced I need this. I have to have this. I have to have it this way. But do you? Now, to confront that directly with someone who doesn't want to inquire into it, you'll just get massive resistance. They'll get pissed off at you. But when someone's open to this and they start to see it in themselves, it's massively freeing for them. It's awesome. Yeah, they said, so many must needs, craving, aversion that plagued my life. Only just seen this as illusion. Right. I need. Is that true? Right? We start with I need and then fill in the blank. But do you need it? Are you reacting because you think you need that? Do you even need it? Where's the root of that? Where's that anchored? Can you find the anchor? You might find you don't need anything. Not in the way you think you do. And they said, no, I can do anything. I can handle it. Of course. Totally. You don't even need to handle it. You can just feel it. Nice. I'm happy for you. Someone said the inversion of control is love. Totally. 100%. What is being described here sounds a lot like what physics calls a quantum superposition. Yes. It's not near or far, empty or full, everything, nothing until it's measured. Or in this case, until thought is introduced. Very much like that. All I can say is do the work to experience it yourself, and you will be blown away. Literally. But that you can actually experience that directly, quantum superposition. It's incredible that that's available to us. Someone said, boy, howdy, do I love the mystery. It's such a fun game. Yes. When you embrace it, and you embrace it by doing that emotion work, like the previous commenter, realizing you can feel vast, vast experiences, and you're okay. And you don't need to do anything with them or do anything to avoid them. Then you have access to this, the mystery that's right here all the time. The world is so ultimately arbitrary, and yet all-pervading essence is so mundane and profound. Truly a cosmic joke. Right on the money. Said there's no real desire for all beings to be at peace. I agree. As it's seen that there is no being or state to be at peace, and yet the heart is full of compassion for all beings. Beautiful. May all beings be at ease. Yeah. Svaha. Case and James, thank you. That is available to anybody, this realization he's describing. To see beyond seeing and hear beyond hearing. Yes, and also to see before seeing and hear before hearing. What happens before hearing? What happens before seeing? What happens before sensation? It's right here. Check it out. Ball Smasher said, so it's possible to see through the time illusion and sit in the timeless present moment and never believe the illusion again? Question. Yes, of course. Someone said, this is Parthodas. I've engaged the shadow by shitposting indiscriminately online, offline with friends, family, and strangers. Can assure you nothing sublime about mom's wrath, despised and avoided by some, etc. Highly unrecommended. Yeah, and you know, this person, Parthodas, I've seen many times leaving very polite comments, very supportive of people, and good insight. And as mentioned here, there's a history of, you know, this shit posting, or I don't know. There's a lot of ways to talk about that, right? There's trolling, getting online, and, you know, it's just anger. That's what I feel when people do that. It's like, you know, when they want to argue with everything I say, or make fun of things, or make fun of people, or, you know, you see it all over the internet. It's like, I kind of just feel for people because they have no outlet for their emotion. Like, it's all emotion. It's just you really want to feel that anger in a holistic way, or in a way that shows you that you can actually handle it, and you don't need to get other people involved in it, right? You don't need to ensnare people in your drama, whatever, how you want to say it. You can feel it. You can just feel it. Feel it. Feel the grief. Feel the anger. Feel the resentment, right? Take it on board, and you'll realize you have the capacity for it. Keep projecting onto others and entangling other people in your drama and all that stuff. You'll never come to that place of emotional autonomy, because you can't see it, because it really does seem like it's involving other people and all this other stuff. It's just a unhealthy coping mechanism. Take it on board, feel it. Sit down, lay down, feel it. Cry, shake, do what you got to do to take that emotion on board. I mean, it's already on board, but just feel it authentically. And I'm not talking to this person who's already done this. I'm saying, you know, to somebody who just feels that kind of pent up aggression or anger or frustration or competitiveness or FOMO, being left out, all of it, right? These are all just emotions that want to be felt. This is from Linda M. So relevant for what I'm going through at the moment. Crippling morning anxiety. I do think it is partly due to SSRI withdrawal, possibly. But nonetheless, the fear isn't coming from nowhere. It is enormously challenging to allow these intensely uncomfortable feelings, but I find that allowing them, talking to them, seeing that they're rooted in my inner child and speaking to my inner child has been so soothing. Awesome. Yeah, and the more you notice that soothing, notice that you have the power and capacity to soothe in this way, inwardly, and that leads to a goldmine, because it'll become less and less and less hot, acute, frustrating, restless, fearful, and more soothing with practice. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it does kind of come in the morning like that. I think, we spend time asleep, and we tend to go into REM sleep or dream sleep more towards the mornings, deep sleep more towards the early part of the evening or nights when we're sleeping. So we probably wake up from a lot of unconscious material having come into consciousness, and we can feel a lot of that. So it's not surprising, but it's fortuitous that it's coming into your consciousness, and that you have some knowledge of the capacity you have to soothe it and to just let it wash through and work through. And it's more than most people realize. It's probably more than anyone realizes when they go through this, but there's a finite amount of it. It's not like you're going to be doing this the rest of your life, right? You have to be open to it the rest of your life, and that is possible, but there will be such a integration and such a capacity and bandwidth for experience that this will just become rather enjoyable at some point. And it says, yes, loving these emotions, hard to do when in the midst of a wave, but it's really the only way. Yeah, there's such a maturity there. It's what I would call emotional maturity. Someone said, this is a good one, oh wise Zen master. When I have a short says nothing is hidden. I don't know sometimes if people are just being a wisecracker or serious. Okay, this is Festral, and they said, my best understanding of the nature of thought is it seems to be the sixth sense that vaguely imitates visual and auditory sensations but never quite matches them. It's pretty good description. Angelo, in your inspiring interview with two teachers at the Denver Zen Center, you talk passionately about your love affair with the koan Mu. It's not the koan I'm in love with. Well, maybe, but it's not just the koan. It's the answer. It's where it points. It's how it points. It's the process. It's the ancient process. It's all of those people who have put themselves through this with the koan Mu and not by other means, who've gone beyond the identity, their own illusory personal identity, and started to move beyond. Until then, it's very difficult to move beyond selfishness and self-centered orientations in life and delusion and so forth. But the men and women and everyone who's made that journey and continued on that journey over thousands of years, like, that has my utmost respect, and it's happening still today and all around us, and it's happening with you, hopefully. So the experience, you don't need a story, right? If you're captivated by Mu, take it up. Someone said, and the same person said, I just picked up your book and look forward to reading it. But I'm very curious about your experience with formal Zen practice and how it forms your current work and teaching. Does it really matter though? Like, I'm not picking on you, but does it matter my experience? Like, what I sense is you want your experience. That's what matters. What matters to me isn't me. What matters to me is you and your unfolding and deepening of that initial insight we call Kensho, if you're interested in Zen. But if you want a more direct answer of how it affected me and why it affected me at the time, just pick up the 3 Pillars of Zen and read the chapters on Dokusan, which was like private interviews with a Zen master or something, where they're doing the one-on-one, and then the enlightenment accounts or enlightenment stories. There's 2 chapters. That's literally what I read as this started unfolding for me. And it's right in there. It's Yasutani Roshi, and Kapila Roshi is the one that wrote it. So check it out. Really, really powerful stuff. Oh, and this last part of the question, I'm going to say something radical from the standpoint of Zen. Not radical from the standpoint of what I say. What is the relationship between Zazen and awakening? Okay. If you're a devout Zen practitioner, plug your ears. There isn't really much. There's some, maybe. What is the relationship between Mu and awakening? There's a lot. Right? But anyone who watches my videos or has read my book knows this. I don't discount meditation, but it doesn't equal enlightenment. Inquiry is what's required. Inquiry of some sort. Willingness to go beyond the illusion of what you take yourself to be. This is a great question. Once the empty fullness is fully noticed, ready for it? What do you do with it? If the empty fullness is fully noticed, there will be no thought arising of what should I do with it. The idea of doing something with reality is gone. It will be gone way before this. It will be gone. So this is kind of trying to approach something that's deeply, deeply rooted in. This is a video that's talking about deep realization, by the way. It's called Deep Non-Dual. So I'm talking about a very a very subtle attunement within the non-dual realization. But this sounds like it's trying to approach it very conceptually. So it's like this level talking about this level, and they don't match at all. That's how it feels to me, because you can't do anything with it. And then they said, everything that is done, experienced, is it. Nothing can be done with it, since it precedes everything. So you kind of answered your own question in a pretty good way. Even to say it precedes, it's a little bit off, but that's okay. There's this sense of being helpless, like there's just this mystery, and I have no control over it. Of course, absolutely. As the dismay of that clarifies and dissolves and integrates, and the true energetic equanimity clarifies and becomes natural and moment to moment, then the concern of having no control or what seems to have been there that's gone now will be out of mind, and there'll be just a full-on enjoyment of the radiant, empty nature. I hope that helps. Is this the Tao? Again, I don't want to give it a name. Is the Tao Te Ching still good pointers? Probably. Anything is if it helps, in the moment. Okay. This is from Atmaram Samarath. Everyone in the non-duality approach, I don't even know what that is winging this process. Okay. But it's unnecessary. The Chinese have mastered this long ago, and it can be done comfortably and much more safely. Okay, let me guess. You're going to advertise something here. There's a certain process which opens the tissues and nervous system, and basically the energy meridians, such as those used in acupuncture. Have a look at a video called Yi Jin Jing, Changing the Tendon Process Theory by Damo Mitchell for a model of how much this process is understood. I'm a little skeptical, but that's probably a good somatic modality, I'm sure. But as, a replacement for any approach to true awakening, I'm a little skeptical that that's what that is. Someone said, an unwinnable game, yet an unwindable game. It's kind of fun. I don't know what that means, but it's kind of cool. Someone said, hey, how come you don't have videos on the most important one, self-view? And they made this comment, by the way, on this video that I made with Kevin Channelik, the first of the series of fetters. He describes his process of his interpretation of the fetters, which is a very powerful process, called Breaking the Chains of Suffering, Fetters 4 and 5 with Kevin Channelik. That's the first one we did. And they said, how come you don't have videos on the most important one, self-view? They're probably talking about stream entry, which is the first fetter. If you're interested in stream entry, then my book, the 2 playlists I would recommend if you haven't had that awakening, would be number 1 would be Basics of Awakening, and number 2 would be Awakening Approaches. Those are what I would recommend. Okay. There's someone who doesn't understand what I'm talking about. I get a lot of these comments on the shorts because the shorts are just randomly shown to everybody by the algorithm. That's just the way the algorithm does things, I guess. This guy goes, bro, what are you actually talking about? We'll end on that one. That's kind of fun. Okay. Thanks, everybody.